Wow, this game sucks! Words cannot describe how much I fucking hate this game. But a video, on the other hand, might just do the trick. Welcome to a review of one of the worst video games I have ever had the misfortune of playing. Devil May Cry 2, or, as it's more commonly known, Ben definitely cried when playing this piece of shit. Yeah, I might be a little bit late to complain about this game since it came out in, Devil May Cry 2 release date 2003, but I'm going to do it anyway because I fucking feel like it. Better late than never. Before we get into this tirade of hurtful language that I'm about to sling in your direction, I just want to clarify a few things. Number one, I'm going to spoil the game, but who gives a shit because it's hot garbage. However, I'm also going to be spoiling a bit of Devil May Cry 1, just to use it as a comparison point more than anything. I will say that the plot in these games are not the main focal point, especially in the case of 2, because I had no idea what was happening at any given time during that game. Number two, I played on the normal difficulty the entire time, and I played using the HD collection on the PlayStation 3. Number 3, I went into this game completely blind and never looked at a walkthrough while playing it for maximum suffering. Because I went into this blind, most of what I'm going to say is based off of my experience, and the rest is a combination of information from the wiki and things that I observed from other playthroughs of this game. So yes, I may get some things wrong. I'm only human. I did look at walkthroughs and speedruns while I was hunting for footage for this video, leading me to my final point, number 4, yeah, all the footage in this video is borrowed from other sources. Why? Because A, I don't have a way to screen capture my PS3, B, I'm not about to fucking buy a capture card for a video on fucking Devil May Cry 2, and 3, I'm never playing this game again. Lastly, I just wanted to mention that I'm mostly going to be talking about Dante's side of the game because it's longer and it's also the main path of the game. Immediately after I beat the first Devil May Cry game, I moved on to Devil May Cry 2 with the absolute lowest expectations. Why? Because I've been told by friends and internet personalities alike that this game was fucking garbage. My friend Daniel even went as far as telling me that the creator, Itsuno, made Devil May Cry 3 because he didn't want to be known as the guy who made DMC2. But it can't possibly be that bad, can it? You can be fucking Lightning McQueen in this game. So obviously there's some good things about it, right? Well, no, not really. The less said about this game, the better, but I'll take a bullet for the team here and tell you all about my painful experience with this trash fire of a video game. I loaded into the first mission and like, wow, immediately, the movement of Dante is so much stiffer than the original, but it's not, I guess, that much of a setback, so I keep going. Then I notice how ugly the HUD is in comparison to the first game. It can't all be that bad, can it? Well, not exactly. There is some good shit. What's that? Whoa, I can fucking double jump in the air right off the bat immediately. I could do some fucking insane gun shit, run off walls like the motherfucking Spider-Man, but with guns. I'm so in for this. Or at least I was for about 10 minutes before I wanted to fucking end my life. The first level is really fun, and just like in DMC1, the first enemies that you're introduced to look rad as hell, and the gun shit you can pull off in this game is insane. But unfortunately, the sword suffers from a severe case of being ass garbage. Well, it's not the end of the world, the guns are still fun. Oh wait, that's kind of cool. The enemies have visible health bars now. That's pretty useful, and definitely won't lead to a major issue of the game later on. I'm totally lying about that in case you didn't pick up on it. The driving force that kept me playing wasn't completionist related, and it wasn't curiosity of the story events, and it certainly wasn't because I was having fun. I had to know how bad it got. I had to go down the rabbit hole and see how bad it could possibly get. And just looking it up wouldn't provide the same feelings of bitter satisfaction and disgusting self-hatred that playing the game myself would give me. Unlike the first Devil May Cry, where I'd be searching for secrets and trying out new combos and moves on enemies and grinding to unlock new stuff just for fun, I found myself going through DMC2 as quickly as I possibly could, just so it would all be over. Instead of the large shit-eating grin that I wore on my face for most of DMC1, I could feel the lifelessness creeping into my facial expression as I stared at DMC2 with cold, unfeeling eyes. Knowing that I would absolutely drive myself to my mental limit with this game, I plowed through the 32 long and harrowing missions of Devil May Cry 2 in just 3 days. See, there are 3 major problems with this game. By that I mean there's 3 major categories of problems with this game. There's a shit ton of problems. Big boy issue number 1. The story is absolutely fucking terrible in every single aspect imaginable. The game splits its story between 2 main characters, Dante and Lucia. It tries to pull like a Resident Evil 2 kind of thing where you need to play both sides to understand the story fully, but I did that and I don't understand the story. Not only that, but it wasn't made very clear at the start that there were going to be branching paths of the same story. In Resident Evil 2, it's made clear very quickly that that's the case, and once you start Claire's story, you realize that this was just what they're trying to do. But both Leon's and Claire's stories make sense when isolated from each other. In DMC2, even with both characters' points of view put together, I still don't have a fucking clue of what was happening in the game. There's hardly any reasoning to any of it, and most of it is just nonsensical from one cutscene to another. Now, yes, I knew that you'd be playing with two different characters at the start of DMC2, but I didn't know the storylines were supposed to be connected until after I started Lucia's run. Like I said, the same kind of thing happened in Resident Evil 2 with Claire, but when I was playing through Dante's section of the game in DMC2, Lucia just seemingly was kind of popping up randomly, and I didn't know that this was supposed to be their two sides of the story being tied together, mostly because I didn't feel like that's what the game was trying to do. It wasn't presented very well. Even after I completed both of their storylines, it still didn't really feel like they were connected, unless both characters were on the screen at the same time. And there's literally no difference in the cutscenes that involve both characters. There's no small differences or changes like there are in RE2. All the interactions are the same, and it gives Dante more camera time even when you're playing as Lucia, which I understand Dante is the main character, but it just kind of feels weird. Lucia just has terrible voice acting.
Wait. What are you doing?
It's especially apparent when there's nobody around to interrupt her. She talks to herself, as most video game characters did at one point or another during this era. But the thing that gets me is that she uses a fucking filler sentence, the kind of thing that you would only really say if you were trying to make an excuse to somebody else of why you didn't want to be at Jesse's fucking party anymore. The actual plot is almost literally the same thing as the first game for some reason. It's not even a creative retelling of something, like how Silent Hill Shattered Memories was a reimagining of the first Silent Hill. It's just straight up the same events with a few characters being swapped out. They even use the same lines of dialogue word for word occasionally.
Trish, devils never cry. Devils never cry.
Not only that, but there are even some of the same bosses from the original game with little to no variation to their movesets and attack patterns. There are events that occur in the story that just kind of happen. In Mission 5 on Lucia's path, she gets hit with this weird red star-ass looking thing, and it looks like and plays a similar animation to that of an amulet power-up. I'll get into that later. But no, this shit just kills you over time. You look into your inventory and this shit is called Evil Heart. All one word, by the way. So then you gotta run through the rest of the stage until you get to this facility where you hit the stupid activation thing. Then you go to this weird blue star-ass looking thing that actually plays the real amulet power-up animation, because guess what? It's a real amulet power-up, but then you're still fucking dying. Heart is still evil. So then you gotta run even further into the facility and put the fucking evil demon heart stupid bullshit thing in the evil heart machine that's just conveniently there for some reason. And its main functionality probably isn't for littering your evil hearts around, but that's what Lucia decides to fucking do, because that seems like a good idea. And then it begins to play the upgrade animation again, and you get the electro heart from your previously determined heart of evil that came out of the sky because God looked down at you and he decided that he wanted you dead. Yeah, she's all better now. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Because none of the characters ever will, and it's never mentioned ever. The main villain is weird in the sense that I don't know who he is. His voice is fucking weird and it changes drastically toward the end of the game.
Everything that belongs to the devils will eventually revert to its original form. I will become an all-powerful immortal!
After playing the game to completion, I don't even remember what his name is. Large man setback number 2. The upgrade system is actually the worst thing ever made by humanity. Wow, this just fucking sucks all the way around. You can't buy any moves like you could in the original, or even upgrade the moves that you already have. Your only options are to upgrade your swords or your guns or to buy an item. Not only that, but it doesn't even tell you what stats to change on the upgraded weapons. I have no idea if they do more damage or if they're faster or how much the statistics even change. Is it even worth it? I still don't know after beating the game. But the ultimate insult to injury about the already garbage upgrade system is the expense of the upgrades. They cost so fucking much. Consumables are way too expensive and the price goes up significantly each time you buy one of them, until it eventually caps out at a high as fuck number. Giant dude headache inducer number 3. Fighting the enemies is just a fucking bad time. This is by far where most of the flaws of the game are seen. You think that in an action video game you want the combat to be the main focal point. You want it to be fun, engaging, and rewarding all at the same time. The game doesn't meet any of those standards in the combat department. Let me just establish first of all that the enemy designs for the most part are the coolest shit ever known to man. There's like these fucking cage skeleton boys, these weird fucking zombie tanks and shit that look like they belong in a knockoff Resident Evil game, and there's living buildings. You know, most of the designs of this game are pretty awesome. Dante looks even more like a badass than he ever has, with the exception of Devil May Cry 5. The point that I'm trying to make is that there's some really interesting and original concepts being seen here, especially on the enemy side of the spectrum, which makes what I'm about to say even more painful. The long and short of it is just, they're not fun to fight. And there's a lot of reasons that contribute to that. Firstly, the AI is just terrible most of the time. There are some fights where there are legitimately some enemies that don't seem to know that you're there, and hurting them sometimes just won't cause a reaction from them. They just kind of sit there. Devil Trigger is basically just you regain health as you hit enemies, or in the case of DMC2, you just heal over time, and you do more damage, and you have cooler moves, and that's about it. You're basically demon fucking karate man, I don't know. You're cool. You're cool for a little bit. You're cooler than you were before you pressed the button. God, I need some sleep. Devil Trigger was supposed to be more fun in this game, I think. I come to this conclusion based on the fact that there are amulets in DMC2 that give Dante and Lucia different abilities that Dante didn't have access to in DMC1 when he activated his DT. But using these different abilities just isn't fun. There's this one that makes you deal more damage, one that allows you to heal more when you're using your Devil Trigger, but the most unique ones are mobility based. There's one that makes you run fast as fuck, and then there's the one that makes you fly. But movement enhancement is inherently going to be bad if the basic movement isn't enjoyable in the first place, and that's exactly what the issue is. The flight is just as stiff as the regular movement, and all it really provided me was an ability to find out where invisible walls were placed into the game, and scream about that for a while. As far as combat's concerned, the thing that disappointed me the most about the Devil Trigger was the fact that it doesn't superpower your guns in the same way. What I'm basically trying to say is that in Devil May Cry 1, whenever you activate your Devil Trigger, your currently equipped gun would become a super powerful version of that weapon, causing it to do more damage and to shoot faster. In DMC2, however, you basically just shoot the pistols really fucking fast. I mean really fast. So fast that the sounds of the firing of the weapons and the sounds of the bullets hitting the enemies constantly overlap, causing the game volume to skyrocket. But no matter what gun you equip, you just get the super fast pistol-like projectiles flying out of Dante's demon fists. It just feels lazy. Aside from that, there's a surprisingly horrendous difference in enemy health values. Either they die way too quickly, or you're going to be spending the next 3 minutes fighting a single non-boss enemy. There's seemingly no in-between on that. The majority of the enemies seem to have the prior issue, but the latter problem even progresses to the point where some enemies have multiple levels to their health bars, making it a chore to fight them. I was recovering from carpal tunnel when I was playing this game, and that certainly didn't help anything. I obviously don't hold that against the game itself, except for the fact that I'm convinced that if I didn't already have carpal tunnel, this game would have handed it to me on a shit-stained silver spray painted platter. The targeting just sucks in this game. When you target an enemy, it actually shows a visual representation in the form of a purple crosshair in DMC2, unlike the original, which had no visual representation of the intended target apart from the direction Dante was facing when he attacked. As far as I know, there's no actual way to manually switch the enemy that Dante is targeting, other than removing the lock-on, facing towards the enemy, pressing the lock-on button again, and hoping that it chooses the enemy that you want to attack. This normally inherently wouldn't be that big of an issue, but enemies tend to group together in large clumps, and there are some pretty narrow areas of the game. I later found out in the last 3 missions of the game that hitting the lock-on button repeatedly will sometimes shift the lock-on to a different target, but no matter how many times I messed with the different variations of pressing it and the speed of which I was doing it, the results were always just so inconsistent. It doesn't work well. And the fact that you're just sitting there hitting the same button over and over again leaves you plenty vulnerable. It's sloppy, and I found that it's often less frustrating just to kill whatever enemy is locking onto to keep it from doing that. What's that? You got a mission where you have to hit switches with your sword in order to progress the level? Well, too fucking bad, because you're permanently locked onto whatever demon that you're locked onto at the time. You're gonna swing your sword at them even if they're flying 50 feet above your head. Oh, don't worry, we'll make it worse. How about we have infinite spawning enemies in this section so that you're constantly locked onto something and you'll never be able to hit the switches. That's pretty funny, right? The worst part, however, is during boss fights. As with many games, there are bosses that have smaller enemies there to accompany them in their bloodthirsty quest to kick your ass. That being said, there were multiple times when I was just a few hits away from killing a boss, but something stupid would happen, like a bat flying out of nowhere, causing me to target them instead, and ultimately causing me to lose that attempt. There's also a boss fight toward the end of both of the characters' paths that splits into 3 heads. Only one of the heads is actually real, I guess, and is the only one that can be damaged at the time. That's pretty typical stuff in a game like this one, yeah? Well, the thing that makes it atypical is the diabolically outrageous fact that the targeting system thinks it knows what's best for the player. I know, as a player, which one needs to be hit, but the game's lock ability keeps changing targets on me, and more often than not pointing me towards one of the 2 heads that won't deal damage to the boss, and it's infuriating. This list of things combined transform what could have just been a slight inconvenience into a leading contributor to the overall weakness of the game's combat mechanic. The amount of problems that this lock-on system causes seems like a massive oversight from the development team. The magnetism platforming system that was present in the first game is either gone or maybe it's just not as strong as it was in the previous installment. I honestly can't tell which one it is. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, basically there's a system system in the first DMC that made it so that you didn't fall off the platforms if you didn't press the jump button, no matter how much you ran around. This would usually automatically get Dante to the next platform without allowing room for user error. In Devil May Cry 2, I just kept falling all over the fucking place. This additionally is not helped by the awkward camera angles that make it difficult to tell where the platforms are placed in relativity to another, causing you to have to restart that part of the platforming and maybe even the entire level if you're at a certain part of the game, leaving little room for error but allowing plenty of space for frustration. The camera angles are just horrible for the majority of the combat sections. They're fixed, so the player has no ability to move them manually, but they sure do love to move by themselves. I'm not sure what it is that keeps pulling the focus of the camera, but all I know is that it sure as hell isn't the player. And there are times when I couldn't see the bosses that I was fighting. I think it happened more often than it didn't. I also believe that the camera pulling was due to smaller enemies that would be scattered around in certain boss fights, although that's just speculation. I'm confused as to why they would get priority over the camera versus the player or the boss if that's the case. All I know for sure is that it's hard as fuck to dodge an attack from a boss if you don't know where the boss actually is and you can't see the attack that they're doing until it's too late. Bosses are just not fun to fight. Their gimmicks feel both unoriginal and uninspired, which is a shame because I adored the boss fights from DMC1. In fact, they're so uninteresting that I found myself pausing the game in the middle of what should be an intense boss fight so that I could add more to this script. Even during the final boss, I was pausing to write down more complaints. That's how little this game captivated me. You're supposed to fight them like this, I'd imagine. But I did what the speedrunner did because it was easier and it worked, and I figured that out pretty early on. It's just boring. It's stupid! During the second to final boss fight of Dante's storyline, there are about a half a dozen other enemies that are there while you're trying to fight the boss. I've always felt that most of the time when you're throwing regular-ass enemies into a boss battle, it's just kind of lazy. It's meant to compensate for the lack of difficulty that the boss on its own would provide. It seems to be the case here, and it doesn't fucking help that the lock-on mechanic is fighting over like 7 different enemies trying to decide which one it thinks that you should be attacking at that very moment. The enemies that appear during the boss fights also don't have visible health bars because the health bar of the boss takes up the entire bottom of the screen. More often than not, bosses will be accompanied by other enemies, making just a miserable time for everybody involved, especially me. And there's this shitty underwater portion of the game that's only on Lucia's part. See, they made the underwater parts of DMC1 pretty decent for an underwater section. Controls were relatively responsive and it was in first person, so swimming to where you wanted to go wasn't exactly an issue. But in DMC2, it's back to awkward, fixed third-person camera controls that once again aren't helped by the game's targeting system. You know what I like? I like just pressing X repeatedly to slowly ascend these weird-ass underwater caves. Oh, but you better get ready for an underwater boss fight where the boss is actually invisible and that isn't part of the camera system fucking up this time. But I couldn't tell that at first. Because it's invisible, it can't be targeted, and it also spends a lot of its time out of view of the camera, making this one of the worst parts of the game by far. Shitty underwater controls plus a shitty invisible boss with shitty camera angles makes for a miserable time. Eventually he becomes visible, but it doesn't do much good when the boss is yet again off screen. It's like the devs were trying to make this the worst gaming experience possible. Now, all that being said, were there times when I enjoyed myself when I played Devil May Cry 2? Yeah, absolutely. But those moments were so few and far in between that it never felt like it was worth it. And those fun times would be even more enhanced if the game just didn't inherently suck dick, but it does. So yeah, I fucking hate this game. Mostly because I had the potential and designs and concepts to be a fucking masterpiece, but it fell flat at every possible turn. But if you like it, go ahead and tell me how wrong you think I am. If you really like the game, then good for you. I don't want to take that enjoyment out of you. But just so you know, you're wrong and this game sucks. But yeah, thanks for watching me talk about the 7 stages of grief that I went through playing this piece of shit. Fuck this game. And there still wasn't even any Waha pizza! Shit!